Had he not given his shoes that day, he would have died today. The nurse whispered those words in disbelief, standing just outside the glass of the operating room. Inside, a team of surgeons worked feverishly to save a man's life. One of them, the lead surgeon, wore a calm yet intense expression, completely unaware that the man lying unconscious on the table was the very reason he was standing here today. A man who, many years ago, had handed him a pair of shoes with tears in his eyes. Let's go back to when this story truly began. It was a bitterly cold December morning in the quiet town of Maple Grove. The kind of morning where frost painted the windows and breath came out in clouds. Kids huddled in thick coats, rubbing their hands together while waiting for the school bus. Among them was Nathan Reynolds, a cheerful 10-year-old with messy brown hair and a smile that could melt the snow around him. Nathan wasn't rich, his dad worked as a mechanic and his mom cleaned offices, but he had enough. Enough food on the table. Enough love at home. And importantly, enough warmth to survive the winter. Then there was Elijah Carter. Elijah had joined their school halfway through the term. He was painfully quiet, always sitting in the back, always avoiding eye contact. His clothes were worn and oversized. His sneakers, if you could even call them that, were full of holes. You could see the tips of his toes through the torn fabric. Most days, those toes were purple from the cold. Kids whispered about him, mocked him, laughed at him. Nathan noticed. And it didn't sit right with him. One day, just after recess, Nathan saw Elijah standing alone near the back fence, pretending not to shiver. His head was down. His feet were bare. His shoes had finally given out. Nathan approached slowly. "You okay?" he asked. Elijah nodded, barely. "Yeah. Just cold." Nathan hesitated, then made a decision. One that came from the heart. Without a word, he sat down on the ground, took off his own shoes, his favorite red and white sneakers he got for his birthday, and handed them to Elijah. "Here," he said, brushing the dirt off. "They're warm." Elijah's eyes widened. I can't take these." "Yes, you can. My dad will probably scold me, but my mom won't let him stay mad." He smiled. "Besides, your feet need them more than mine." Elijah held them like a sacred gift. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked Nathan straight in the eye. "I won't forget this. Ever." Nathan simply smiled and walked away in socks. Life moved on. School years rolled forward like waves. Nathan and Elijah drifted apart. They ended up in different high schools, different cities, different lives. Nathan stayed in Maple Grove. He helped his father with the garage and eventually took over the business. He married young, had a daughter, and lived a quiet, decent life. But things weren't always smooth. The economy dipped. His wife fell ill. Bills piled up. Through it all, Nathan remained the same giving, selfless soul he'd always been. Elijah, meanwhile, turned that small act of kindness into fuel. He studied harder than anyone else. He read books late into the night under street lamps when the shelter lights went out. Teachers began to notice his brilliance. With time, he earned a scholarship to a prestigious university, and from there, he went on to medical school. He became one of the youngest and most respected cardiac surgeons in the state. But even with his success, Elijah never forgot the cold morning in Maple Grove. He never forgot the boy with messy hair and warm eyes who gave him his only pair of shoes. Fast forward to one fateful night. Nathan had been feeling unwell for weeks, chest tightness, shortness of breath, fatigue. But like most men who work hard and worry about everyone but themselves, he ignored it. Until he collapsed at his daughter's birthday party. Ambulances. Sirens. A frantic wife. A terrified little girl. By the time they reached the hospital, his heart was failing. The staff rushed to prep the oar for immediate surgery. A renowned surgeon was called in for an emergency operation. Dr. Elijah Carter. He didn't recognize the patient when he entered the room. He rarely looked at the names, only the scans, the vitals, the job at hand. But just before scrubbing in, a nurse read aloud the patient's name while reviewing the charts. Nathan Reynolds. Age 38. Cardiac failure. Possible arterial blockage. Elijah froze. The name crashed into his chest like a wave. He walked over to the glass, looked through, and time folded in on itself. He saw a man, unconscious and pale, but with the same face from years ago. The same eyes. The same soul. A flood of memories came rushing in: snow, torn shoes, warmth, kindness. "I want this case," he said firmly. For 4 hours, he worked tirelessly. Every beat of Nathan's heart became personal. Every stitch, every decision, carried the weight of a promise made long ago. Outside, Nathan's wife clutched their daughter's hand, praying. She didn't know who the surgeon was. She didn't know the history. All she knew was that her husband's life was hanging by a thread. When the surgery ended, Elijah stepped out into the waiting area, still in his scrubs, exhausted but smiling. "He's going to be okay," he said. Tears erupted. The little girl ran to hug her mother. As they thanked him over and over, Elijah looked down at the child and knelt beside her. "Your dad once gave away his shoes to a boy who didn't have any," he said softly. "He saved that boy's life without even knowing it. Tonight, I just returned the favor." The mother stared, stunned. You're that boy?" Elijah nodded, his voice catching. "I owe everything to him." Nathan recovered in the following weeks. When he finally opened his eyes, Elijah was sitting beside his bed, holding a small box. "Thought I'd bring you something," he said, opening it. Inside was a pristine pair of red and white sneakers, exactly like the ones from childhood. Nathan smiled, his eyes welling up. "You remembered." "Of course," Elijah replied. "I never forgot." Years passed. Nathan and Elijah remained friends. Close as brothers. Their story became known across town, then across the state, then across the country. One act of kindness. One pair of shoes. That was all it took to change the course of 2 lives, and to prove that what we give today may one day come back to save us in ways we can't imagine. So the next time you have the chance to help someone, do it. You never know whose life you might save. And you never know, maybe someday, they'll save yours.